U.S. Sugar 148 is a 462 Pacific-type steam locomotive built in April of 1920 by the American Locomotive Company in Richmond, Virginia. It was one of 12 steam locomotives that were originally owned and operated by the Florida East Coast Railway, which ran passenger and freight service between Miami and Key West, Florida on the Overseas Railroad, stretching about 128 miles of track. The Overseas Railroad was only in service until 1935 after railroad viaducts were destroyed by hurricanes. The Great Depression ultimately ended and ceased railroad operations on this stretch of track on the Florida East Coast Railroad. As a result, these 12 FEC steam locomotives were either scrapped or sold to other railroads. In the 1930s, U.S. Sugar purchased 3 of the 12 steam locomotives to haul sugarcane trains in Clewiston, Florida. Locomotive 148 continued to operate for the Florida East Coast Railroad until it was eventually sold to U.S. Sugar in 1952. The U.S. Sugar continued to operate these FEC steam locomotives until the 1960s, when the introduction of diesel locomotives took over the rails. As a result, the remaining steam locomotives were sent to railroad museums for preservation, while Locomotive 148 continued to operate on the Black River and Western Railroad between 1971 until 1973. After being sidelined for boiler and mechanical maintenance, Locomotive 148 was sold to various owners and operated at other tourist railroads before returning to U.S. Sugar in 2016. As restoration work began, FMW Solutions stepped in to help with the restoration of 148. U.S. Sugar employees used one of their large cranes at the sugar mill to remove 148 piece by piece. In addition, a new tender was fabricated to replace the corroded tank. Boiler work was done in Clewiston and it passed its steam test at the end of December of 2019. On April 17, 2020, it was returned to operating conditions and officially back on the job. But this was just the beginning of what's next to come. U.S. Sugar and FMW Solutions plan to restore a second steam locomotive to operating conditions for their tourist railroad project. They chose to restore the Atlantic Coastline 1504 steam locomotive from Jacksonville, Florida as U.S. Sugar's second steam engine. The goal is to have the Atlantic Coastline 1504 ready to roll in the coming years to be part of U.S. Sugar. Currently, U.S. Sugar has over 300 miles of track to haul sugarcane from the fields to the mills. Their tracks are linked to the Florida East Coast Railroad and CSX in South Central Florida. This is the oldest and only sugarcane farming company in America that hauls sugarcane by rail. Last year in October, we made a trip to Clewiston, Florida to see U.S. Sugar 148 hauling a sugarcane train, and it quickly became one of our favorite steam locomotives to film. On the weekend of January 29th and January 30th of 2022, we joined the staff of Trains Magazine and other participants in Clewiston to partner with U.S. Sugar to have Locomotive 148 to be part of its first ever photo charter. 148 was also fitted with a custom-made Powell 3-chime whistle for the event. Climb on board as we follow U.S. Sugar 148 through the open lands of South Florida. This is U.S. Sugar 148, the Sugar Express. The time was 8:25 a.m. on Friday, January 28, 2022 in Clewiston, Florida. It was quite a busy morning as the railroad was hard at work when we arrived at the locomotive shops in Clewiston. Locomotive 148 was already steamed up and coupled up to its 3-car passenger train scheduled to depart Clewiston at 11 o'clock a.m. The train consists of the Palmdale, a diner car, the Miami Locks, an open air car, which are both owned by U.S. Sugar, and finally, a privately owned observation car named the Georgia 300. This rail car has been previously used at campaign events by George H.W. Bush, Bill Clinton, and Barack Obama. The line that the train will be taking is supposedly the planned route for U.S. Sugar's tourist line since it only runs 1 or 2 trains a week. This run was an added bonus to our weekends since it wasn't part of our planned photo event, but we made it out early and joined other rail fans to see the action. After the rail traffic has cleared, 148 was given permission to depart on time at 11 o'clock a.m. in Clewiston, bound for Okeelanta. An empty sugarcane train got in front of 148 and his passenger train as we arrived at Evercane Road for our next spot located outside of Clewiston. Once the empty cane train cleared, 148 followed suit. At Rogers Road, we caught 148 one more time before the train arrived in Okeelanta. In the meantime, we will be waiting here for the return trip back to Clewiston since there were no other public roads or places to film the train without trespassing. After a brief lunch break, we made it back to Rogers Road just in time to see 148 and its passenger train make the return trip to Clewiston after arriving in Oakylanta. At Evercane Road, we encountered another sugarcane train before 148 and its train continued its trip on the cane block. As we returned to Clewiston, we ran into another sugarcane train that was heading towards the mill. 148 would be stopped briefly so the cane train can enter the mill. .148 was given permission to proceed back to the locomotive shops in Clewiston once the sugarcane train cleared the line. We wanted to get this shot at Francisco Road, and thankfully we had plenty of time to set up our cameras before the train came. Our day concludes back at the locomotive shops in Clewiston to meet U.S. Sugar 148 and its passenger train on its return trip from Okeelanta. Later that night, we came back to the shops for night photos with 148 and the staff of Trains Magazine, along with other participants. This will officially kick off our busy and exciting weekend in Clewiston. The following morning was another busy day with 148. After much needed rest, we were back on the cane block heading to Oakylanta with a sugarcane train. Since many of the planned spots are not accessible to the public by car, we took a ride behind 148 as an added bonus. On this day, the weather was mostly clear with sunny skies, but the wind was the biggest factor we had to deal with for the day. After arriving in Okeelanta for lunch, our train turned on the Y to make the return trip back to Clewiston. We would make a few more stops before arriving back at the Locomotive shops. The first day came to an end at the sugar mill at sunset with 148. After dropping off the sugarcane cars at the mill, we returned back to the locomotive shops where we would conclude our busy day. On the final day of the photo event, we were back on board with 148 as it hauled a 3-car passenger train for the day. The original plan was to head to Lake Placid, but due to the heavy rail traffic on this part of the line, we will only go as far as Palmdale. This is also the same line that US Sugar 148 went on back in December of last year when it hosted its first public mainline excursion. At Palmdale, 148 would be uncoupled to its passenger train and then recoupled at the other end. From there, we made several stops in Palmdale and Moorhaven before returning to Clewiston. Well, we reached the end of our incredible trip in Clewiston. Thank you for watching our video featuring US Sugar 148. We'd like to send a special thank you to US Sugar and Trains Magazine for making this possible. To learn more about US Sugar and Locomotive 148, go to www.sugarexpress.com. If you liked the video, be sure to leave a like and a comment below. And if you haven't done so already, I invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat for even more Rayward content. Until next time, my name is Angel Mangalinden, and I'll see you on the tracks.